there, my name is Brittany and I work in the Experiential Learning Hub as the coordinator of student programs. Today I'm excited to present Making the Most of Your Summer Research Experience along with my colleague Alexis and our peer helper Natalie. So here is the agenda for today's session. First, Natalie is going to be covering professionalism in the workplace. So she'll cover what exactly is professionalism and what does that look like. Next, she'll cover how to best navigate work expectations and then tips for working from home, as I'm sure a lot of us are during this time. Next, Alexis is going to cover building a relationship with your supervisor. So how to start things off by being proactive, and then how to prepare for performance reviews. Finally, I will cover networking opportunities. So we will talk about what is networking really, and how to increase your confidence in making connections.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie and I'm a peer helper with the Experiential Learning Hub. I'd like to kick things off by talking about professionalism in the workplace. Professionalism can be defined as a way of speaking, behaving, and collaborating that helps a person to be successful in professional settings. Now, firstly, this means being on time. You want to arrive to work, go to meetings, and return from breaks on time every time, even if you work from home. If you're currently working from home and you think you'll be away from your computer for a little while, I suggest telling a supervisor or colleague that you'll be stepping away from the screen for a little while. And if you do let someone know that you'll be away, then it's a good idea to let them know when you've returned as well. Now, professionalism also includes calling in advance if you know you will be late or unable to come into work. Of course, there are times where you can't know beforehand that you'll be late or unable to come in, but you still want to let someone know as soon as you can. I remember at my last co-op position where a lot of my work included maintaining cell cultures. I worked very closely with a colleague who woke up sick a couple of times, and they told me first thing in the morning, and I found it really helpful because I was able to change my schedule for the day right at the beginning to accommodate the work that they had to do as well as my own, which was really important for maintaining the progress of certain experiments that we were both conducting at the same time. So call in advance whenever possible. It's not just professional, it's conscientious too. Now, professionalism is also about having a positive attitude about the work you're doing. I'm sure there will be times when work may not be as interesting or as exciting as you'd hope for, but it's still important to have a good attitude, I find. I think we've all worked with someone who hasn't had a positive attitude about their work, and you may have noticed that it can be contagious and negatively affect your mood as well as their coworker. And it could even damage your professional relationship with this person who has a bad attitude. So try not to be that person. Now, professionalism is also about being prepared for work by taking care of yourself. So, this means getting enough sleep the night before so that you are awake and feeling ready to contribute positively to your team in the workplace. It's also important to ask questions if you don't understand something. While finding the answers to your questions independently is professional, it's also professional to ask questions whenever you're not able to find out the answers by yourself. This shows that you don't want to waste time at work and that you're taking your job seriously. Professionalism is also about wearing appropriate attire. The definition of appropriate will vary based on the environment you're working in, so I suggest using your supervisor and the graduate students around you as a gauge. If you're in a very casual setting, then I still suggest that you be mindful of what you're wearing. I find that the golden rule here is that if you would wear it to trappers, then don't wear it to work. Or you could ask yourself, if the president of the university were to unexpectedly tour your office or pop in on a video call meeting with your team, would you feel alright with what you were wearing? There'll be more advice on this in a later slide that covers working from home. Also be open to learning new ways of doing tasks. I find that often whenever I start working at a new organization, they usually have their own way of doing things, and it's easier for the team if you adapt to their method of getting things done rather than being out of step with the rest of the team by just doing things your own way. This way, you'll also open yourself up to learning many more things than if you remain inflexible to changes. Similarly, be open to constructive feedback. I think as students, it's the best time to be trying new things and learning from our mistakes. If someone more experienced than you gives you feedback, try to use it to improve yourself. No one is perfect, and we all have things that we can work on. So actually try to use the constructive feedback to improve your professional skills moving forward. Professionalism also means not only working well with others, but taking initiative as well. If you have ideas about improving certain processes in the workplace, or you would like to help a colleague with their work, then I highly recommend taking the initiative and asking to be involved in such things. Finally, we're all human and mistakes do happen in the workplace. The important thing here is that when mistakes happen, try to take a collaborative approach to solve the problem. Instead of thinking of conflicts as me versus you, try to think of it as us versus the problem. So for example, if a piece of lab equipment wasn't properly cleaned, instead of saying you didn't do this, you could try the equipment wasn't properly cleaned last night and I had to redo my experiment this morning. How can we make sure that everything is properly cleaned moving forward? This way you can focus on the solution and not the problem. Professionalism in the workplace also relates to social media and the use of your smartphones. When it comes to your privacy settings, if you know you post things that your boss wouldn't approve of on social media sites such as Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, make sure that your privacy settings are locked down so that they couldn't find it if they went to your profile. Or just be mindful of what your online presence is and scrub any questionable content. You might want to do what we call the grandparent test, where if you think your grandparents would be upset with the things you're posting, then maybe you shouldn't be posting such things to your social media. As for adding colleagues, be aware that if you add colleagues to social media, they may tell other coworkers about what they see you posting. So think before you accept a friend request. I personally treat my Facebook profile practically like it's my LinkedIn page. It's completely professional, so I don't mind adding colleagues on Facebook, but I like to keep my Instagram more personal and less professional, so I never accept a friend request from a colleague on Instagram. If you're engaging in public threads on social media, be mindful of what you post on public Facebook groups, Twitter threads, and LinkedIn posts. Unfortunately, people can and do get fired for posting inappropriate comments on social media. And even if you're close with your supervisor, don't call in sick through Facebook or Instagram Messenger. These aren't professional ways to update your supervisor, and it would be much more appropriate to email or leave a voicemail instead. Again, people can and do get fired for misusing social media when trying to contact their supervisor for work-related subjects. Smartphones are best left in your bag. I think we've all experienced this from time to time, where you only expect to be on your phone for a second, but before you know it, you're 20 minutes into looking at your Instagram feed. I know the timer app on smartphones can be useful for timing certain steps of experiments, but try to use a watch instead if you need to keep an eye on the time, and most labs have small digital timers which you can use as well. Moving along now to some tips for effectively working from home. Many of you may be in positions that require you to work from home, and there are certain things that you can do to help yourself be more productive. This includes creating a routine for yourself. I'm in a work from home position right now, and I find that it helps a lot to keep consistent work hours, and something else I find to be very useful as well is letting my coworkers and supervisor know what my schedule is. To avoid distractions, only check social media during your breaks and turn off notifications on your computer. Personally, sometimes I like to watch an episode of a certain TV show that I only watch during work breaks and never on the weekends, just to try and separate the environment around me in the house between weekdays and weekends. You will also want to set daily goals. You can stay accountable by planning out the tasks you'll complete for the day. This ties into the next point of breaking down large projects into manageable tasks. I really like using software like Microsoft Planner to schedule due dates for my projects, but a regular calendar will work just fine as well. Try different methods out and see what works for you. You can also work effectively from home by scheduling check-in meetings, not only with your boss, but with other members of your team as well. If your supervisor doesn't initiate this, then suggest meeting once per week to start. This will not only keep you accountable for managing your responsibilities, but it will also contribute to building a relationship with them. We'll cover more on this in the Building a Relationship section. Finally, it's important to be video call ready during the workday. I personally like to get dressed in business casual attire to put myself in a work mindset, but it's completely okay if that doesn't work for you. You just want to make sure that you're ready for any impromptu video calls by looking presentable. Speaking of video calls, let's talk about etiquette when it comes to group video or audio meetings. Firstly, be on time. It can take a bit of time for certain video call platforms to get everyone on the call. I always prefer to join 2 to 3 minutes early at minimum to avoid missing the beginning. This is also when your colleagues will likely be chatting before the meeting officially begins, and I find it to be a great time to get to know your coworkers and supervisors better. Keeping your mic on mute whenever you're not the one who's currently speaking in a large group meeting is useful to cut out any annoying background noises in your environment that could interrupt other people who are speaking on the call and make it difficult for everyone else who are trying to listen. It's also important to show up to meetings, and what I mean by this is just making sure that your presence is known at meetings by saying something like hello when you join the call and goodbye when you leave at the end. If it is an audio-only call, announce that you've joined by saying something like, "Hi everyone, Natalie here." If you're contributing something to the meeting, then let everyone know who's talking by saying, "This is Natalie. I agree with Brittany that blah 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 blah." It can be awkward for others to think, who just said that? If you're part of a larger team, or if you're new to the team and they don't know your voice well enough just yet. You can stay focused during meetings by avoiding multitasking while on call, as it's easy to zone out and miss important information. Be mindful of your background as well. It is a good idea to make sure that there isn't anything distracting in your background, and Microsoft Teams and Zoom have settings to blur or change your background if this is a concern. The university actually released some really awesome options to use as your Zoom and Microsoft Teams backgrounds, which are images of really beautiful parts of campus that you may be missing right now, such as Johnston Green. Finally, if you need to step away from a conference call for a moment, don't put the call on hold. This can create an annoying beeping sound for the others who are still on the call, so it is better to just send a message in the chat to the group if possible to explain that you need to leave for a moment and then hang up and rejoin the call later. This brings us to the end of the Professionalism in the Workplace segment. I'll now hand over to Alexis, who will be giving you tips on how to build relationships in the workplace.
Great, thanks Natalie. Hi everyone, my name is Alexis and I work in the Experiential Learning Hub as the EL Services Administrator. In this role, I support on-campus job opportunities such as work study, URA, and USRA. So now that you're aware of the expectations for professionalism, let's talk about being proactive by getting to know your role and your supervisor. Now, building relationships at work can be tricky under normal circumstances. So this summer, you want to make that extra effort to get to know your supervisor since you won't be meeting them in person. If you haven't already, be sure to discuss your goals for the summer with your supervisor. It might be good to ask something like, would it be all right if we go for a 15-minute coffee chat to talk about my role this summer? I want to make sure that we're on the same page about your expectations. Here are some questions you can ask during that meeting. What are your expectations of me for the first month? What should the process be when I have questions? What kind of status update or reports do you want? What actions or behaviors are really helpful from someone that reports to you? And what are your priorities for my work this summer? You also want to get to know your supervisor as a regular human, so get used to that small talk. Ask them how their weekend was, what their travel plans are for the summer, what's keeping them busy outside of work, if they're attending any interesting upcoming conferences. It may all sound superficial, but being liked is important for working well together and getting a positive, personalized reference from them. So it's a good idea to show some interest in their lives outside of the research. Now, that being said, do be aware of sharing overly personal details during small talk. You do want to maintain that professional boundary. So asking for advice is also a really good way to get to know your supervisor. And we'll chat a little bit more about that later when Brittany talks about networking. Let's talk talk a bit about experiencing an unstructured role. Now, the word unprecedented is being thrown around a lot these days, but the reality is that your experience engaging in research this summer truly is unprecedented. That means your supervisor may be having a difficult time coming up with tasks to keep you busy, and we have heard from students who are experiencing this. So, if you are asked to brainstorm projects or tasks for you to work on, here are some ideas. You can take a deep dive into your topic, especially if this is a topic that you haven't explored before. It may be a good idea to take a look at some past research, videos, articles, just to become more informed about your topic. An annotated bibliography is also a good thing to look at. You can take your deep dive a step further and curate a list of resources such as books, articles, documents, with a brief description of each, informing of the relevance and quality of the sources chosen. You can also do a literature review. So similarly, with a literature review, you can look at what existing scholarly research has to say about your topic. You can also visit your library commons. They have tons of information on working with data and writing resources for you to use. You can also take this opportunity to learn some new software. Let's say your Excel skills could improve. This may be a great opportunity to brush up on programs or software that you can use both during and after your research. There are tons of free tutorials and content online. If you do have any questions about accessing those, you can just contact us directly. And one more thing you can consider doing is developing training or process manuals and resources. So what often happens with these research positions is that when a new person comes into the role, let's say next year, the supervisor essentially has to start from scratch to train them. It would be great for a new hire to have a set of materials that can be referred to during the onboarding process, and that can save your supervisor a lot of work. And in general, you could just ask your coworkers, what would make your day-to-day life easier? You want to show that initiative to take on tasks rather than waiting around for your supervisor to tell you what to do. Let's take a look at how to navigate a supervisor that may be away. You want to anticipate what you'll need while they're away and discuss this before they leave. So look at the timelines of your projects and take a look at when your supervisor is expected to be away. Think about what feedback or resources you might need during this time. Have a clear backup supervisor. So you may be working in a setting with multiple grad students. Having a clear go-to person for questions can help avoid conflict among the team and make sure you get your responses faster. Also, plan some check-in meetings. If your supervisor is often away, take initiative to plan out one-on-one check-ins to make sure you're getting feedback throughout the summer. This is a helpful strategy even if your supervisor isn't away from the office often, and especially when you're working remotely. So I'm new to my role here at the EL Hub, and I find check-in meetings to be crucial to my professional development. I have weekly meetings with both my immediate supervisor and my team lead, and this is a great way to review items from the previous week and also to set goals and intentions for the week ahead, and even just to touch base on a human level. You may not need to check in as often as I do, but you do want to find some time to plan meetings with your supervisor at some point in your opportunity. Now, if your supervisor doesn't already organize a halfway check-in meeting, it's a good idea to take initiative and plan one with them. This is a great opportunity for you to mention any work that you're not currently involved with, but you would like to take on. And here are some good questions you can ask during a check-in meeting that will demonstrate your initiative. How am I doing? What is working well? What can I improve? I'd like to get more involved with. And now that you know my career goals, is there anyone you can think of who would be helpful for me to meet? Another way to build a relationship with your supervisor is through a performance review. Now, at the end of the term, it is common to have a performance review or exit interview to discuss your work. If your supervisor doesn't normally organize these, again, it's a good idea to be proactive and ask to schedule one. So you want to come prepared. Before the meeting, be sure to brainstorm examples of work you're proud of and scenarios that you could have handled better. This will make it easier to answer questions such as what are your biggest strengths and what can you continue to work on. You also want to accept feedback. Be open to feedback and take it to heart. You may receive feedback that you may disagree with, but you want to try to see things from your supervisor's point of view. And ask for a reference. If you would like your supervisor to be a reference for you in the future, be sure to ask them now. It's best to get the green light now instead of panicking when you're called for an interview with 24 hours notice. Also, ask them if they'd be comfortable providing a personal email address because they may change jobs and you still want to be able to contact them. Now, I've been in that situation where a previous supervisor changed jobs and I was unable to reach them when I wanted to use them as a reference. So it's a good idea to get their personal contact info or even add them on LinkedIn so that it's easy to track them down when the time comes. Here are some questions to anticipate during a performance review. What are you most proud of achieving? What are the barriers or challenges in your role? What recommendations would you suggest to make things easier for future students? And what key learning will you take away from this role? So thanks so much for listening to my section of the presentation. Next, Brittany is going to chat with you about networking.
Thank you, Alexis. Speaking of building relationships, let's move on to talk about networking, because at its essence, building relationships is really what networking is all about. So I want you to think about what comes to mind when you hear the word networking. Does it look like this? Networking doesn't have to be weirdly smiley and awkward like these stock photo models. Networking and making meaningful connections can be done both in group events like the one pictured and in one-to-one settings. So today I want to reframe your conception of what networking really is and increase your confidence in having conversations about your career path with your supervisors, professors, and people who work in fields that interest you. At this stage in your career, networking is really all about building relationships through two main strategies: asking for advice and offering support. So you might be thinking, I'm just a student, what could I possibly offer? With professors, you can offer to volunteer in their lab or ask if they need help reviewing articles or putting together a meta-analysis. With employers, let them know about interesting things that you learn in class or read about on your own time that relate to their industry or job. The advice or help that you offer doesn't have to be incredibly impactful or life-changing, but a sincere offer and interest in helping someone is key to making a genuine connection with someone. When it comes to networking, I really love this quote from Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. The main takeaway is that good networking makes people feel good. It feels good to help others, so they'll feel good helping a student, and you'll feel good offering support in any way that's feasible. So one of the best tools when it comes to networking are informational interviews, which are really just a fancy term for talking with people working in jobs that interest you and asking them about their career. A good way to build relationships is through conducting informational interviews. They're a great networking strategy, especially if one-to-one conversations are more to your comfort level and you're not a fan of those big group mixers. You can ask about where they got to where they are, what they like about their job, what skills are needed to do their job, and questions that will help you explore the field. These are incredibly helpful not only for gaining contacts in that field, but also to help you figure out which jobs match up with your strengths and your interests. As a summer research student, you don't necessarily need to ask your supervisor, can we do an informational interview? But you could phrase it as, I'd love to get to know more about your career path. Could I ask you more about it during a coffee chat? Human beings like to feel helpful and important, which is why we love to give advice. Use this mindset in making connections. Networking isn't shoving your resume in people's faces and asking them to hire you. It's about building meaningful connections. So here are some tips for networking this summer. So try to say yes to any request to socialize with your coworkers, such as virtual coffee breaks, lunches, or any other social activities outside of the office. You can also get involved in any social threads posted in shared office chat software like Slack or Teams. Definitely make sure to be asked to introduce to other professors and staff as well, as your professor that you're working with or the staff that you're working with likely have connections to other folks on campus who are doing similar work. Make sure that you are genuinely interested in getting to know your team and be intentional about this, especially if you're working remotely this summer. Ask your supervisor about upcoming online conferences or webinars they're attending. One of the positives of the pandemic experience that we're living is that a lot of conferences that were supposed to be in person and were likely inaccessible due to cost or location have moved online, and as a result are much more accessible to students. Also, make sure to keep in touch after you leave. Add your team on LinkedIn or have another avenue to keep in touch apart from their work contact info. So before we end, I would just like to promote what we do at the Experiential Learning Hub. We have a career services team who assists with resumes and cover letters, further education, for example, helping you with your personal statement or developing a CV, as well as interview preparation for job or volunteer opportunities. We also assist with career planning, so if you're not sure what life has in store for you after graduation, definitely a great idea to get in touch with a career advisor. And we also assist with job searching as well. So being a good job searcher is a skill that takes work, and we'd be happy to work with you on that. I also like to note that our services are free for 1 year from the date that you graduate, so be sure to use us even after you leave campus. And virtual career advisor appointments are available. So if you visit experienceguelph.ca and select career and then appointments, you can book an appointment with a career advisor. I also want to take a moment and promote a new advisory committee that we are launching. So we're looking for volunteers to contribute to a student-led initiative, the new Career Development Advisory Committee. So what you'd be doing would be reviewing career exploration and job search content, providing feedback on how content can be improved for other students, and you'd attend bi-weekly evening meetings through the summer semester. And in terms of what's in it for you, you would get to gain new skills to add to your resume and help make a tangible impact for other students. So at the bottom of this slide, there is a link that you could type into your browser to indicate that you're interested in joining the committee, or you can email me, Brittany McManus, at mcmanusb@uofguelph.ca. So this was the first workshop in a series of 3 that we're running this semester. So I wanted to take a minute and promote the other 2 as well. So workshop 2, connecting your summer research position to life after graduation, will be running in July. This workshop features 3 hands-on activities designed to identify your career interests, strengths, and values, as well as give you the tools to engage in further career exploration. Whether you have no clue what's in store for you for life after graduation, or you know exactly the path you'd like to follow, this workshop can help uncover and affirm what you have to offer the world. Workshop 3, Translating Your Experience, will then be offered in August. So if your resume is a list of tasks or a list of achievements, it's a great idea to attend this workshop and learn how to decode a job posting and make your resume stand out from the pile by reflecting on what you've accomplished this summer and marketing the transferable skills. So you can register for these workshops on Experience Guelph. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's workshop. Take care.